Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Taft City Council Successor Agency Joint Regular Meeting Agenda, Tuesday, September the 20th, 2016. As a courtesy to all, please turn off your cell phones or turn them to vibrate. Sometimes a little embarrassing about what kind of music you people are rocking to, so I don't know if we can do that. But anyway, if you would all do that, we'd appreciate it. We're going to start this evening's meeting with an invocation by Greg Haslow after the Pledge of Allegiance led by yours truly. So if you'll join me, please. Salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we pray. Almighty God, as was written centuries ago, I acknowledge again tonight. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, those that watch in vain. Father, we've witnessed trouble growing around the world. Innocent people out for an evening and terror strikes. So tonight I pray not just for our city of Taft, but for our nation's cities. Renew in us a heart to return to you and respond with your blessing of peace in our streets. Help those in authority watch over their appointed cities and fulfill the roles that you've granted to them. May peace, righteousness, and justice mark our nation, and may we all practice loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. I pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Mayor Pro Tem Noor.
Here.
Councilmember Cryer.
Here.
Councilmember Bryant.
Here.
And Councilmember Hill. Here.
All right, first item on this evening's agenda is a proclamation honoring women in education. Councilwoman Hill, I believe you asked that this be placed on the agenda, so we're going to allow you to read this.
All right. It is my honor and my pleasure to present this tonight. The City of Taft, the State of California, proclamation honoring women in education. Whereas education is vital to the success of our nation, and women play a dynamic and crucial role in the field of education. And whereas, for the first time ever, the positions of superintendent, principal, and vice principal in all Taft schools are currently held by women, many of which were raised and educated in Taft themselves. And whereas the City Council would like to recognize this first in Taft history, and these women listed below for their achievements and their dedication to educating our children. Nancy Bonner, this is alphabetically, by the way. Nancy Bonner, Assistant Superintendent for Taft City School District. LaVonna Callahan, First Principal of Roosevelt Intermediate School. Dr. Blanca Cavazos, Superintendent, Taft Union High School. Dr. Deborah Daniels, Superintendent, President of Taft College. Mary Alice Finn, Interim Principal of Taft Union High School. Julie Graves, Superintendent, Taft City School District. Lisa Kindred, Principal, Parkview and Conley Schools. Brandy Swearingen, Principal, Lincoln Junior High School. Monica Toro, Assistant Principal, Taft Union High School. And Heather Ward, Principal, Jefferson and Taft Primary Schools. Now therefore, the Taft City Council takes great pleasure in honoring these women for their continued commitment to excellent and local education, being a part of this monumentous occasion in the Taft educational history. Dated the 20th day of September 2016 by our Mayor Randy Miller, Mayor Pro Tem Dave Noor, Councilmember Cryer, Councilmember Bryant, and myself, Councilmember Hill. Before we have you come up, we've got one more to read.
I almost begin applauding immediately.
Yes, stop you.
It's worth it, yes, that's right. Now, before all these ladies come up here, we have one more proclamation for this evening. It is the Pedestrian Safety Awareness Month. And one cannot argue that these two are not inexplicably tied together. Just as surely as these ladies are responsible for the education of the young people in the city of Taft, they are also responsible for the safety of those young people that they are educating. So I would ask that, Councilman Bryant read the proclamation Pedestrian Safety Awareness Month.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. All right, City of Taft, State of California, proclamation declaring September 2016 as Pedestrian Safety Awareness Month. Whereas pedestrians are the most vulnerable of all roadway users, drivers, and walkers alike, need to take care, watch for others, and share the road safely with everyone. And whereas every pedestrian deserves an effective, equitable, and safe learning environment, getting safely to and from school is necessary if we are to attain that goal. And whereas fatalities and injuries to our students while getting to and from schools can be avoided each year if our community takes steps to make pedestrian safety a priority. And whereas motorists should be keenly aware of children walking to and from school and be especially cautious in and around school zones. They should slow down when approaching a school, abide by the 25 mile per hour posted speeds in school zones, and follow directions given by the district personnel in student safety zones. And whereas the observation of Pedestrian Safety Awareness Month in September encourages students, parents, educators, and other community members to realize the importance of slowing down in school zones and around school buses. Now therefore, be it proclaimed, the City Council of the City of Taft does hereby proclaim the month of September 2016, and for that matter, every month, day, year from here on out, unofficially of course, as Pedestrian Safety Awareness Month, and encourage all employees and citizens to participate in raising their awareness in the practice of safe and healthy behaviors in all aspects of their lives. Signed this 20th day of September 2016 by Mayor Miller and the 4 council members beside him.
Now, we're going to ask that you lovely ladies come up here and get presented with both these proclamations so that there is a photo opportunity. It's going to be tough. Over there. Yeah, you're going to have to do it over there. Yeah, it's kind of crowded. We're going to do it right over there, ladies. That way there's enough room for everybody. I'm going to have to double up, huh? You're going to have to do some real picture organizing over there. Are you going to be able to get everybody in there, Doug?
I say shortness is found, but we have no shortness. That's the meeting anyway. Okay, ready? On the count of 3. 3. Now, Renee, can you step in there? There we go. Yeah. You're right there. Yeah, we may do 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. My turn. Everybody look this way, and then you can be in all of them. Perfect. Thank you.
If any of you or all of you would like to address the council, you're welcome to, or you can appoint a spokesperson to come up and address the council. Any volunteers?
See how they're running from us?
They're running. They're all running.
Good evening. I'm Deb Daniels, the Superintendent President at Taft College, and it's my honor to be here tonight to accept this proclamation. What an honor to be recognized in this way. I know I'm new to Taft, but it's just a good example of the wonderful community that I feel that it is. It's such a warm place and very committed to the education of the people that live here. So on behalf of West Kern Community College District and Taft College, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank all you ladies. And even though you're just new to Taft, that just means your love affair with the people of Taft is just beginning.
Good evening, Blanca Cavazos, Superintendent of the Taft Union High School District, and I've had a longer love affair going on, I will tell you, with the city of Taft, since I will have been here 4 years in March. And first of all, it's been such a great pleasure to work with all of you because we do work closely with the city in a number of different areas. And I think the best thing is how we all work together. Each of the ladies that are here tonight, we all work together often and with the same purpose in mind, is really to serve the children of the community of Taft and to do that in the best way possible. And so I sincerely thank you. This is great. Actually, Julie and I noted last year when she was appointed, we said, we have all these women that are leading education in Taft, and so it's wonderful to be recognized by the City Council. So thank you very much on behalf of the Taft Union High School District and all the women and men who work there as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Blanca.
And I'm Julie Graves, Superintendent of Taft City School District. This is a great honor for Taft City School District and myself as well. I've actually been an educator here since 1984, so a long time.
Oh my, yours is a very long love affair.
So it is, absolutely. I wouldn't have it any other way. So thank you. This is a great honor, and to be to receive both proclamations, I really appreciate that. So this is a great opportunity, and we're happy to be here. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I might add one thing, and that is on the proclamation about the pedestrian safety aspect. And we need you all's help, especially, to not only enforce the fact that it is incumbent upon drivers to drive safely and recognize the rights of those that cross the streets, but talk to the young people, talk to the students. I myself have watched them cross the streets in the evening wearing a dark hoodie t-shirt or sweatshirt, completely oblivious to traffic, texting on their phones or having earphones in their phones. And we had a terrible tragedy in the city of Taft crossing Kern Street. So just as surely as we are all responsible for our own well-being, they can certainly help take care of themselves, and a little help from you all will go a long way to reminding them as well. So I know you'll do it, and thank you very much for all that you do for the young people of Taft and the entire city. Thank you again. Okay, next up, I'm going to switch things up a little bit. I'm going to take item number 4, which is citizens request public comments. I'm going to move it up a notch. Okay, so we're going to do that next because we have one individual wanting to address the council, and I think I know what it's about. So we're going to take item 4 and move it up to item 2.5. This is citizen request public comments. This is the time and place for the general public to address the city council on matters within its jurisdiction. State law prohibits the council from addressing any issue not previously included on the agenda. Council may receive comment and set the matter for a subsequent meeting. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. This evening we have a former mayor and councilman and volunteer extraordinaire, Mr. Paul Linder from Oil Dorado, Inc., wanting to address the council. And also, if the camera, you can look at my shirt and then you can look at his. So.
Your apparel is quite appropriate for tonight. Thank you. Well, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members, staff. It's a pleasure to be here. As you all know, October 2015 was a rather nice event in Taft, and it's been almost a year. I can't believe it's moved that quickly. But in our process, we attempt to solicit funds and raise money to perpetuate Oil Dorado. So there's been money set aside for the next celebration, which will hit in 2020. We were very honored with the assistance of the city, with our donors, our sponsors, and the citizens of Taft, the people that shopped in the store and took in the events and enjoyed the 10 days that we hope was a memorial 10-day celebration for everybody. So the Oil Dorado Executive Board, and I don't know if anybody else made it tonight. This is what happens when you work this hard. Nobody shows up.
Well, you take all the credit, Paul. It's all right.
Well, they're going to let me tonight. But anyway, the bottom line is we met, our finances are strong, and we did really well, and we thought we needed to give back to the community. Oil Dorado is just that. It's for the community to celebrate its incorporation and the good, hardworking people here. So we had some meetings, we made some decisions, and we talked with the city manager on things that we might be able to do. And we came down to the final idea that we would purchase 10 what we call steel park benches for the city of Taft that can be placed really at the city's discretion. We mentioned Rails to Trails because it's a great place to walk and sit and enjoy the calm and the peacefulness up there. So knowing your policies, I knew that we couldn't just drop that on you, that there was a formality to put this on an agenda and for you to accept that donation. And in your consent calendar, I would ask you to do so. The park benches are quite nice. They're not to be taken lightly because they are heavy. And
thank goodness they'll stay there then. Yeah.
And our commitment to the city of Taft is we don't want to put any burden on the city of Taft. And if there's something that we need to do further for the installation, whether it be concrete or some labor or something, we're here to do that. We want to make this a no-cost donation to the city. But we believe the park benches with our logo on it will send volumes out to people and be there for a long time. So I would again ask you to accept that donation from us. We graciously offer it. The benches are just shy of $1,200 a piece, so you're looking at about a $12,000 donation from the citizens of Taft who supported Oil Dorado. So I'd appreciate it very much if you do that, and it was wonderful seeing you again, and I get to go home and have dinner.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Paul. Thanks for coming by, and thank the Oil Dorado Committee, which, by the way, folks, is a dedicated group of volunteers, and Oil Dorado does not come together in a month or 2 months or 6 months. Oil Dorado planning starts the day after the last Oil Dorado. To make it happen takes a great deal of time and commitment from a lot of really great people. And is one of the finest things that we have as our legacy in the city of Taft. We're very fortunate to be able to continue that. So thank you very much, Paul. Really do appreciate it. Thanks for everybody.
Thank you for moving me up. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Least I could do.
Scads now.
Okay, next up.
Creatures of opportunity.
I'm going to go ahead and let some people leave the room. I understand that, so we'll let them head on out. We are fortunate enough, gentlemen, glad y'all can make it. Next item on the agenda is going to be a study session, the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. And I believe Tom Jordan, the Senior Policy Advisor, is going to be here to give us a presentation.
Well, good evening, and thanks for inviting us here. I think this invitation happened after our executive director gave a presentation at KernCog, and it's real important for us to get out and talk to people around the valley because we really are kind of at a critical junction in the valley's journey towards clean air. We have a lot of deadlines coming up that are going to be very challenging, and we want to make sure everyone's apprised of our situation as we move forward, because there could be some ramifications given some of the, provisions of the Clean Air Act that may not be attainable when we look at our situation here in the Valley. So what we're really facing is and I'll go through a little bit about the Clean Air Act more later, but the Clean Air Act's been around for a long time. And what happens over time is EPA continues to review air quality standards to see if they protect public health. And that's the only test they look at. They don't look at achievability. They don't look at technological feasibility. They don't look at cost, whether it's feasible financially to meet the standards. The standard that they're required to look at based upon court cases in the Federal Clean Air Act is, are the standards health protective? So what's happened over time is EPA continues to ratchet the standards down on a 5-year increment. They go back and look at the standards and they get more and more stringent. And a number of the standards, given the topography and meteorology here in the San Joaquin Valley, are almost approaching what would our background concentrations, or the concentrations we would have if there were no people here. So we're getting to a point where, while we've made tremendous progress, we've seen great gains air quality-wise, we're getting to the point where we've already reduced emissions by a dramatic amount, and getting those next reductions will be extremely difficult. We're estimating that even after getting 80 to 90% reduction from a lot of the source categories from the oil industry, at tremendous cost, to meet the newest standards for particulate matter and ozone, we're looking at another 80 to 90% reduction. So when you think about that, that's a virtual elimination of emissions. Any internal combustion engine has to be almost near zero emission technology for us to meet those standards. So given that situation, we may be in a situation under the Cleaner Act, if you can't do a plan, given the time frame that EPA gives you, there are sanctions provisions that are very onerous of the Cleaner Act, and we're concerned, looking at our situation right now, that we may actually end up triggering those sanctions, which the first one is basically a moratorium on new businesses or business expansion. It doesn't state it as a moratorium, but what it does is when you open a new business, you have to offset any emissions increases you have from your facility. If we trigger sanctions, they double the amount of offsets you have to get, and it's basically cost prohibitive for anybody to do anything new that has any emissions associated with it. The second sanction is loss of federal highway dollars, and that happens 18 months after you miss a deadline to submit a plan by EPA. So all the money that goes through KernCog from federal sources, you would lose the ability to spend those dollars. So the sanctions are very serious, and we want to make sure everyone's aware of our situation as we move forward. When you look at, when we go to do a plan, we basically look at it's called an emissions inventory, and it's basically an accounting of all the emissions from the different sources in the valley. And what we have here are two stacked bar charts with the emissions. In 2013, you'll see where those emissions are. If you look back to 1990, those emissions would have been at 1,000 or above. So we've made dramatic reductions. The top blue line there is the 1997 8-hour ozone standard. We have a 2023 deadline to meet that. The next line below that is the 2008 8-hour ozone standard. So as I mentioned, EPA keeps ratcheting the standards down. That's what we need to get to that. And then down below that red line is the most recent PM 2.5 standard we have and the most recent ozone standard. So we have to take those stacked bars and make them fit under that bottom red line. So that's the 90% reduction we're talking about. Quite a daunting task. So when you look at that stacked bar chart and what each of those different segments represent, what you'll see is the Air District, our authority under the Cleaner Act is to regulate stationary sources. So everything from paint shops, gas stations, all the way up to oil refineries, that's where we have authority. And that's just that top piece of that bar chart. We could zero out all those emissions. We're nowhere near attaining the standards. You could eliminate all the agricultural emissions. You're not near meeting the standards. You could eliminate all the passenger vehicle emissions in the valley. You didn't meet it. Basically, even if you just did heavy-duty trucks, that wouldn't be enough. But if you look at that bar chart, you can see that heavy-duty trucks, off-road equipment, mobile sources are where the majority of the emissions are. They're primarily under the authority of the federal government. So without action by the federal government to reduce those sources, we really don't have much of a chance to meet the standard. So as I mentioned, when we submit a plan, so we have deadlines, we have a number of plans due over the next couple of years. When those deadlines come, you have to identify where all those emission reductions are going to come from. So we have to have a control measure or an incentive program and show the reductions, and it has to show that we've reduced that bar chart, the stacked bars, down far enough to meet the standard. If you can't do it, the plan's not approvable by EPA. EPA publishes a notice saying you didn't submit an approvable plan by the deadline, starts those sanction timeframes, and you end up in sanctions. So that's where our concern stems from. The task right now, we don't have a solution, and as deadlines come, we're worried we're going to trigger those clocks and not be able to turn them off. So when you look at the Federal Clean Air Act, it was initially adopted in 1970 and it was amended in 1990. When it was adopted in 1970, it passed pretty much unanimously through Congress. In 1990, there was only a half a dozen no votes to the Clean Air Act. And it was well-meaning. We've seen great benefits from the Clean Air Act over the years, but I don't think if you look at where we've gotten to today, it would have passed with those kind of numbers if people really understood kind of the nature as these programs matured and what it would create for a region like ours to do. As I mentioned, the federal law doesn't allow EPA, when they set the standards, to look at technology or economic feasibility. So when they tell us, here's the standard, they say this is health protective, you need to find a way to meet it. And so then we go through the analysis and look at it, and what we're basically coming up with is we don't have the technology right now to meet the standard. So yeah, basically, one way to put it, and I know I'm in oil country, so I hesitate to even say this, is we'd have to almost ban fossil fuel combustion in the valley to get anywhere near. We don't have the authority nor the desire to do that, but that just gives you an idea of what we're looking at.
I don't want to slow the flow, but there's a couple of things that I'd like to interject. And I understand heavy trucking. Not only am I a former mayor of the city of Taft, and I've lived in this area for a while, but I have run a heavy-duty crane and trucking company that services the oil companies for 25 years. I have had to sell perfectly good, low-emissions, $100,000+ semis out of state for a reduced amount of money in order to buy newer, brand spanking new trucks, which, by the way, are heavier, have a larger frontal area, push more air, get less mileage, and haul less product down the road because of the idiocy involved in this. When you say you cannot reduce overall emissions without federal help, I can tell you that the state has given you a great deal of help. The overregulation of industry within the state of California, especially in the oil and gas industry, and the low prices of the commodity, has reduced the activity levels for off-road, PM10, PM2.5, and heavy-duty trucking because of the workload, probably by at least 80%. Now, that's not recognized by the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, the fact that so many contractors are out of business or have parked their equipment and so many people are sitting at home in spite of all of it. In regard to the ridiculousness of so much of this, I will tell you that I answered a request some time ago by a lady who wanted all council members, and I know you did too, in the state of California to respond to a proposed moratorium on fracking because of all the hazards that it represents to people's health as well as the health of the environment. And so much of the stuff that is being peddled by them, and like you say, they don't have to care about whether or not science exists. They just make a decision, and it's so arbitrary. And what I said in that statement, and it went to Sacramento, was if the legislature in the state of California passed some law passed some legislation, it was signed into law by the governor today, that 10 years from now, every vehicle traveling up and down the highways in the state of California would do so by sucking in polluted air and emitting nothing but poetry and petunias. That's the kind of crap coming out of Sacramento that we have to deal with.
And I totally get the sentiment. And one of the things I want to point out is you understand the truck rule. So California has a truck rule like no place else in the country. And as you mentioned, there's truck owners that have a perfectly good truck, does the job just fine. There's a fleet average rule. They've had to get rid of those trucks. They can't sell them to anybody else because everyone else in California has to comply. You have to sell it out of state. That smaller bar chart includes those reductions already. So that gives you an idea of how far we have to go. Even with measures that are as onerous as that truck rule, we're still that far off from where the federal government has said we need to be to meet the clean air standards.
I hazard to say, if you shut down every single vehicle, every single heavy-duty truck in the state of California and replaced it with four-legged transportation, that then the associated methane emissions by those horses and those donkeys and those oxen would create as big a problem, if not bigger. Next thing you know, you would be putting charcoal filters on the emission stacks coming out of four-legged animals pulling that. That's where we are.
Yeah. So, and I think I'm getting my point across.
Yes, indeed, you have. All right, I didn't mean to stop it.
No,
I just wanted.
You're fine.
I felt compelled to bring some of these things up.
That's totally appropriate. And so we've been sharing this message around the Valley. We've also been sharing it back in D.C. We've been pushing for, and I'll talk a little bit more about some Cleaner Act modernization proposals. Long story short, we think the standard should be, set the standard to be health protective. We're fine with that. But the standard should be, are you doing everything that's feasible for you to do? And if you are, you shouldn't be penalized under the Act. They can't ask for more than that. And so we actually ran a piece of legislation along with some interest from Texas and elsewhere. We're able to get it through the House this year. It doesn't look like a companion bill is going to make it through the Senate, so we're going to start over next year. But we're sharing our story. We're kind of the canary in the coal mine. The San Joaquin Valley is in the worst situation of any place in the country as far as the Clean Air Act goes. Southern California is close behind, but they're not even quite as bad as we are. So we're sharing it with everyone that'll listen at this point.
And we are victims, really, of our own geography in that regard.
Thank you. I was just about to ask that.
We also, what's brought this to a head is recently for, as I mentioned, there's every 5 years EPA comes out with a new standard. We worked with EPA on a standard that's 3 standards ago on a plan. We didn't meet the attainment deadline by the time frame specified in the Act, basically because of the drought that we are experiencing. And the Clean Air Act allows you to flag certain emissions as natural events. 120-year drought isn't one of those. So we couldn't flag those emissions and say, this isn't a normal situation here in the Valley. So we missed the deadline. When that happens, you're required to ask for an extension from EPA, and you have to make certain demonstrations to get that extension. We worked with EPA for over a year. We submitted a plan to them. They actually proposed approval of that plan in December of 2015. They then opened up for comments. They got some comments from some environmental organizations in March. We didn't hear anything back from them. The deadline for them to give us the extension was June. June came up. We're starting to get a little nervous. Didn't hear anything from EPA. They decided not to act and let the deadline pass. So we missed our attainment time frame and are put into a situation where we have to submit what's called a 5% plan. So we have to show that every year we reduce emissions 5% until we attain that PM 2.5 standard. Now there's 2 more stringent PM 2.5 standards that have been adopted since then that we'll be doing plans for in the next coming years. This kind of is what brought this all to head. Believe it or not, we've worked pretty well with EPA over the years, and this was one of the first times we've kind of had a breakdown with them of complete communication when we were kind of in a tough spot. And this gives us more concern as we have to work on these tough issues. If we don't have a partner we can trust and we can work with at the federal level, it really does cause concern for us. So, as I mentioned, there's multiple standards. Just to give you an idea of the deadlines we're looking at, the 1997 standard is the one that we just missed the attainment deadline for. We have to submit a 5% plan by December 31st of this year. That's not enough time to get a plan done, so EPA is going to issue a notice that says we missed that deadline. We do think we can meet that requirement and submit that plan, but those sanction clocks will have already started by the time we submit that plan. So that's the easiest standard to meet. The next standard is the 2006 standard. The deadline is 2019 for us to attain that standard, but it's really not 2019 because under the Clean Air Act you have to show 3 years of clean data. So we have to start showing clean data in 2017, which is next year, and there's no possible way to meet that standard. So we're currently looking at our options. We went and talked to our governing board. One option would be to ask for another extension. We didn't have a great experience with that this last go around. Another option would be to kind of play the clock until the deadline and go into a 5% plan mode for that standard after we missed the deadline. And we're currently looking at all those options. And then in 2012, EPA tightened the standard once again, and this is the one that we need the 90% reduction for. It's the 2012 PM 2.5 standard. The deadline is 2025 for us to meet that standard. So one of the things we've pointed out is, so even if we had the technology and we had the resources, you're basically asking us to retrofit, replace every truck, replace every tractor, replace every ag pump with a new, cleaner one that doesn't even exist yet, and do that in a 4-year time frame. It's billions and billions of dollars of investment needs to be made, both public and private, we think. And so our concern is it's just not enough time to meet it, and we don't know how we're going to do a plan to do that, to demonstrate that we'll meet that standard.
Another issue that the state of California has been struggling with in the private sector is because of overregulation and unattainable regulations, we as a state have forced over 1 million private sector jobs out of the state of California in the past 12 years. Over 1 million of them, some 625,000 landed in the state of Texas. They're pro-business, and they understand the fact that business needs to operate. The reason we had a recession in the state of California is great because everybody in Sacramento wanted to talk about the recession that we suffered through. You think about 1 million good-paying private sector jobs leaving California. Think about the opposite of that. Think if you could come to the state of California, you could tell the governor, you know what, I know a way to bring 1 million good-paying private sector jobs back to California. You pick the 100 biggest cities in the state of California, and I will bring each of them 10,000 good-paying private sector jobs. They would erect statues to you even bigger than the ones the governor once erected on his behalf for high-speed rail, all up and down the damn state. We created that recession. We drove that private business out. And each time we layer those regulations, we drive more private sector business out. And that's the jobs that you want. So not only can we not retain the industry and commerce that we have in the state of California, we certainly cannot attract any new industry. When they talk about the job growth in the state of California, job growth, when you're driving out a $100,000 a year job and you're bringing in minimum wage part-time jobs and drawing a parallel between the two, is lunacy. But that's what we're doing. So here again, I'm not chewing anybody out, but especially for the people out there in TV land, that's another one of the big issues that not only will we continue to face, we have already faced in the state of California, and it is a misery brought upon ourselves by the people in Sacramento.
Yeah. So we shared the information I'm sharing with you right now with our governing board. Our governing board, we have one county supervisor from each of the 8 counties. Supervisor Couch is from Kern County. We have 5 city council members. It rotates. There's 3 small cities, 1 north, central, and south, and 2 large cities. Right now, Harold Hansen from the city of Bakersfield is actually on our board. Mayor Miller served on our board for a period of time and did a great job representing you all on our board. So, we shared with our board, our Valley folks, they're very pragmatic, and we let them know the same thing. So what they did is they adopted some guiding principles to guide us as we go through this process and to try to work through this issue. The first one is we as the Air District are going to look at the sources under our control and demonstrate we're doing everything that's feasible for us to do. So if we're going to have credibility talking to folks, we need to show that we have everything in order. In general, anyone in the country, because of our situation, that looks to regulate a piece of equipment looks to us. So we kind of are, cutting edge when it comes to that. We've had to be because of the Clean Air Act. But we're going to continue to look, and there may be some minor gains that we can get from that area. We're also going to pursue all avenues we can to demonstrate to EPA that they need to do their fair share of the work. Now, the requirement is for us to submit a plan, but as I mentioned, probably about 80% of that stacked bar chart is actually under EPA's regulatory authority. And if the Clean Air Act requires the Valley to meet it and we need that technology, there should be a national standard. Our businesses shouldn't have to buy a truck that's more expensive and way cleaner than anyone else in the country to meet a federal standard. They should adopt national standards that apply to everybody. And so we've actually issued a resolution to EPA asking them to do a national standard on trucks and off-road equipment. And so we're going to continue to push them on that front. If they don't, there's really no way we can even get near these standards. So we want to make sure they're doing their fair share. The other thing is I mentioned exceptional events or natural events. In the past, we've only submitted a request to EPA to flag data if it was a make or break for attainment. So like we were right near the line and we've just gone over. We're going to be a lot more aggressive in submitting those. And as a matter of fact, EPA published a new guidance on how to submit those recently. Actually, just this morning, the pre-publication came out. We're looking at that, and we're gonna anything that we think we went over the standard or anything that bumped our numbers up higher, we're going to flag it and say we think this much of it's from fires. Right now, today, the valley's getting impacted by fires. This is much from wind, and we're going to flag all those events. So we're going to be very aggressive in flagging those events.
How about, does the state realize that by not delivering water to ag land and fallowing some 500,000 acres of ag land, that they expose themselves and the state? You know, we have high winds. That's beyond our control. I even think it's beyond your control. And we are subject to PM emissions issues with blowing dust. The more land we fallow because of the fish in the Sacramento River, the bigger that problem is. So a temporary short-sighted solution to one exacerbates another existing condition. They are going to have to try to find some balance in that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The other thing we've told our board is, you know, where we can, we're going to ask for these extensions. But with the recent inaction that we've seen from EPA, I mean, we worked very collaboratively with them. We thought we'd cross the finish line, and then we kind of had the rug pulled out from under us. We aren't expecting that. We aren't assuming that those extensions are going to be approved. So we're assuming the worst. We're assuming that deadline's going to stay at 2024, and we aren't going to get an extension. But we're going to continue to work to see what we can do. And then the other is and this is a tough one because I've actually worked at the Air District for about 20 years, and we've been in situations where there's been a potential for sanctions, and we've always worked incredibly hard to make sure the Valley was never in that peril. Given the situation we're looking at right now, we want to make everyone aware we need to accept the possibility that we may be sanctioned under the Clean Air Act. We're looking at a situation where we don't have the tools to satisfy the requirements. And so we want to make everyone aware that may happen. And, you know, we're going to do everything we can to avoid it. We're going to do everything, you know, from our authority. We're going to work on the political angles to avoid it. But that's something we just need to be aware of and make sure that we're minimizing any potential impacts if we do trigger those sanctions.
One would have to think that typically government agencies are emboldened by the administration that is handling them during any given time. The current administration that has been in charge of these things for the past 8 years has definitely emboldened the EPA and all this, greenhouse gas emissions and reductions and global warming interpretations. I'll say that. I do not deny the impact of human beings on the atmosphere, but I do not buy into all of the stuff that's being peddled under the current administration. But perhaps we can change that with a new one.
Yeah, there will be an election, and we'll see where things go from there. So we're all watching on that front. And you know, given the tools we have and the time we have, we're going to do everything we can to try to meet the standards. Finally, one of the things, and we always want to tell everyone, when you're talking to people about the Valley's air quality situation, people that aren't from California in particular, like when you're back in D.C., they don't understand the bowl we live in. They don't understand our meteorology here in the Valley. They assume that we just, we're emitting more than everybody else, or we're causing our own problem. We like to spell out, because we think, we've seen great air quality improvements, and we think we need to acknowledge the sacrifices people in the Valley have made and to get those improvements. And so when people talk to you and say, well, the Valley just needs to do something about it, we have the toughest regulations in the country. Like I said, people look at our rule book. If they need to do something in the oil fields, what's the San Joaquin Valley doing? If they need to do something to ag, to dairies, what's being done in the San Joaquin Valley? We are the standard that everyone else is measured by. So No one's done more than we have to meet these standards. We estimate that businesses in the valley, and this is an amazing number, have spent $40 billion since the Clean Air Act was adopted, reducing emissions here in the San Joaquin.
I don't doubt that one bit. Having written those big fat checks, I don't doubt that for a moment.
And over about the past 10 years, we've generated over about $1 billion of public-private partnerships, incentive programs to try to assist folks in getting into cleaner technology. California, we've already talked, toughest regulations on cars and trucks. Consumer products. We at the Valley Air District were required in the early 2000s to tell people when they can or can't burn their fireplace. We were the first region in the country to do that. So we're talking about pretty invasive stuff that we've already done, and so people need to be aware that the Valley, has taken this seriously. And all that's gotten about an 80% reduction, but as I already mentioned, we've still got a long way to go under the Act. I do want to mention, I didn't have a slide on it. We worked in trying to modernize the Clean Air Act. One of the things we've tried to provide is that common sense of if you've done everything feasible, you won't be penalized. So we came up with a package of changes to the Act. We call it the Clean Air Act Modernization Proposal. And I have to say, Congressman McCarthy, the Valley delegation, all worked very hard on our behalf to get that introduced. As I mentioned, we didn't get across the finish line. We're going to continue working with them and look at ways we can change the Act to make it fit the Valley better. But I do want to recognize them for their past efforts to get that attached to a bill and get it to move at least through the House. The Senate's another issue, and we'll have to see after the election what happens in the Senate and see what we can do there. And with that, I'll take any questions or comments you guys all have.
All right, I'll tell you what, I'll open it up. Marshall, would you like to start?
Thank you. I'm on Kern Cog. I'm one of the board members, and I listened to your presentation by your director, and I was shocked by what I heard. I thought it was important to have you come here and hear from the horse's mouth what's going on, not just secondhand. And I raised a few questions while I was there, and we spent, like you say, over $40 billion in our area here in the San Joaquin Valley, and what's our benefits? We're spending all that money. How much are we looking at? $2.5 billion in road money coming back from what we paid to the government. They're going to give part of it back to us. Yet we're still paying all that money for the modification to our engines and getting new engines. I know I've been in the farming business, still am it, and we did all our boosters and our tractors, and we went through Tier 2, Tier 3, now there's Tier 4, and I had one engine go out last year, and that time was a Tier 3, it's like $48,000. Put a Tier 4 in there because you can't get any more Tier 3. It's $160,000 for that darn engine. Luckily, we got an exemption on it, and we had to get that sent off to get the engine from out of the state to get here. But it's getting ridiculous to do business here in California, and it's just interesting for people to know what's going on. The question is, what can we do as a council and a city to help get the word out to EPA and Sacramento and stuff? What can we do? What kind of a letter or a resolution or what can we do to help you?
So I mentioned our Clean Air Act modernization proposal, or our request for EPA to do national standards. We also, one of the things we're going to be pushing in the next year is the establishment of a national clean air fund for regions like ours. So one of the things we've heard from federal officials is, well, if we adopt that national standard, it's over control for most of the country. You guys are just in the worst situation. So we said, okay, well, then give us the resources to deploy that equipment here. And so our board just met with the South Coast Air District. They've had a little bit of a change in political dynamics down there. We had a hard time working with them in the past, and now they're a little bit more aligned with us. We're going to join forces with them and push for the establishment of what we're calling a National Clean Air Fund to provide incentives to put clean equipment on the road in areas like ours that have this significant challenge. So as we develop those, I meet with the COG directors on a monthly basis. We'll share it maybe through the COGs, and if we could get support of our legislative proposals, our request for EPA to take action to clean things up, or even when we submit a plan, if we need requests for them to take action, we can share that through the COG to the councils and maybe get your support. I think that's probably the best way we could work together. And then, as you know, as council members, I'm sure you're involved in different advocacy efforts, different discussions with state and federal officials. Just by sharing, what we've done and the situation we're in will be helpful. So we'd appreciate that as well.
So basically, it's share and tell.
Correct. At this point, we're getting the word out and trying on a few key fronts to get EPA to take action, get resources, and the home run that's going to take a while is get some changes to the Clean Air Act to make it work a little better.
Okay. I got a few more questions
Sure.
on there. Okay, it came at COG too on there. What's the extreme they can do to us, and what's likely going to happen, and how much it's going to cost us as far as our penalty for our license and our automobiles and stuff on our.
So there's really kind of three types of penalties under the Clean Air Act. One of them, we have a $12 surcharge on registered vehicles in the valley that happened when we missed an attainment of standard for the 1 hour ozone standard. We were able to strike a deal with EPA. Our big concern was the valley was going to pay that money. It was going to go to the federal treasury and disappear. We've been able to roll that money back into incentive programs here in the valley to buy clean equipment. So while that's an onerous penalty, at least it's being reinvested here in the valley. The other two that are the much bigger ones are the 2-to-1 offsets and then the highway sanctions. And once you trigger them, so one happens 12 months after you miss a deadline. That's the 2-to-1 offsets. The highway sanctions happen 18 months after you miss the deadline. And then EPA is required to come in and basically take over your program and write what's called a federal implementation plan. You stay under those sanctions until you adopt a plan. You either adopt their plan locally or you adopt a plan to supplant their plan. So once we get into sanctions without a change to the act, you stay in them until you have a viable plan to meet the Federal Clean Air Act.
What that all entail, in your opinion? What do you think they took over? Which likely it sounds like they are.
So there's been only, in California, there's been only one other time where EPA has started drafting a federal implementation plan, and that was in Southern California in the late 80s. And some of the measures I'm not kidding here. Some of the measures they proposed were no drive days. So when air quality hit a certain level, you couldn't drive. We've heard discussion of things like no farm days. Now, that's onerous enough if you're talking about a handful of days a year. When you look at the number of days they would have to do it here in the valley, we're talking months. So they don't have any magic technology we don't have that's hidden away. I think they don't want to have to do a plan because they know they can't do one either. But the Clean Air Act doesn't give them these penalties under the Clean Air Act are spelled in statute. They happen automatically. There's no discretion on whether to pull the trigger on the sanctions or not. So,
Okay. Councilman Bryant?
Well, you pretty much answered all my questions, but I guess to reiterate your statement about no drive and no farm days, I guess they're forgetting that there's also, subsequent to that, going to be no eat and no live days as well. Maybe they just don't realize the implications that has for them. It's disheartening to understand that a lot of these policies are set on the federal or national platform, I should say. People don't understand that California is probably one of the largest economies within the continental United States, or one of the largest economies within the entire world. A lot of those tax dollars, even despite all this crap regulation that they have, continues to fuel the federal budget. And in doing so, fuels their ridiculous government salary. They don't understand that they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. But I guess that's what we come to expect when it comes to most any level of government, and thank goodness it's not this own government here. So I don't have anything that you haven't already answered, so I appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Councilman Hill? Councilwoman Hill?
I have no other comments.
No other comment. I have one last comment, and I support everything you've said. Like I say, I've written those big checks. I've replaced equipment unnecessarily. You're talking about the extra $12 we had to pay on the registration fee. I'll give you an example. We replaced a perfectly good semi. We went through, and I paid a consultant to come do an emissions test on our entire fleet. And the result of the emissions test, actual test on our fleet, was that we as a fleet were emitting 31% of our allowable emissions. 31%. That means we're 69% below the maximum based on current law. In spite of that, I had to sell tractors and buy new ones. When I bought those new semis, they were $170,000 a piece. The registration annually is about $2,900, and they still tacked the extra $12 onto that brand new $170,000 semi that I paid $2,900 a year to register. The ridiculousness goes on forever. Finally, this will be under Dave's College of Obscure Knowledge, just to demonstrate just exactly how ridiculous this all is. Part of what we're trying to do is the whole greenhouse gas thing. Of course, we're all sure that the polar ice cap in Antarctica is going to melt away and the oceans are going to rise, and we're all going to drown everybody along the coastal areas of the United States. So that's one of the driving factors behind getting rid of all hydrocarbons. The latest studies by NASA regarding the ice in Antarctica. This is the latest studies by NASA. Mass gains of Antarctic ice sheet greater than losses. Over the course of 2003 to 2008, NASA's latest greatest science shows that Antarctica averaged an additional 82 billion tons of ice per year. Additional. It gained, over the course of those years, on average, 82 billion tons of ice. Not melting away, it's gaining. And then you think 82, who can think about what 82 billion means? For heaven's sakes, we're talking about trucks. Let me help you break it down. 82 billion tons of ice. If you filled an end dump, a semi going down the road to its legal limit of 80,000 pounds, would be 3,280,000,000 end dump loads of ice each year, every year. Well, how do you figure out that? Well, I will tell you, each one of those end dumps is approximately 60 feet long. If you park them bumper to bumper, the circumference of the United States, or the world, is about 24,901 miles. The line of end dumps carrying the extra ice gained in Antarctica every year for those 5 years, each year, would circumnavigate the globe 1,497 times. Now then, do you have any idea of how much ice that is? Right? 82 billion tons of ice. And that's what we've been gaining, not melting away. A lot of this stuff, much like I told you about my response regarding the emissions of poetry and petunias, is just that. The reality is that the United States of America is very responsible when it comes to emissions, whether it is in the development of petroleum products, gas and oil, or in industry or commerce. If you rate, and it has been done, all of the industrial nations on the face of the globe, if you rate the gross polluters based on $1,000 worth of gross domestic product per kilos of emissions, India, China, and Russia are some of the worst, rated at number 5, number 7, and 9 times. So they emit 5, 7, and 9 times as much as we do to produce the same $1,000 of gross domestic product. Every time we add another layer of regulation in the United States, perhaps to get that next 2% to save the world all by ourselves, we push manufacturing jobs and industry over where? India, China, and Russia. So to try to save 2%, we push the same emissions over to those places where they create 5, 7, and 9 times as much. 500%, 700%, 900%. So the reality is, if tomorrow we told industry in the United States of America, in order to bring jobs back and create R&D, research and development money, if we allowed every industry in the United States of America to emit twice as much, 100% more, and we could bring those jobs back from overseas, we would save the ozone to the tune of a factor of 2.5, 3.5, and 4.5 times. Double our pollution output across the board. We save the ozone. I looked on a map. There's only one ozone. Last time I checked, maybe I missed one. It goes all the way around the globe. That's the reality. You want to do the math? There's the math. Okay, global warming, fine. You want to go ahead and give your nod to that? But what we are doing is we are putting the hands of those who are responsible with the environment in the United States of America over there. And by the way, they're upwind from us. Upwind, and the jet stream carries those pollutants out of those countries straight to the West Coast. So, I won't go on. Dave's College of Obscure Knowledge. I hope you understand just exactly how much ice we're generating in Antarctica right now, and that is not a lie.
Well, thank you for having me. I have to say that this isn't a fun presentation to deliver, but we and our board think it's important. I mean, we could have hunkered down and hid under a desk when we found out, but we think it's important to get out and talk to folks around the valley, let them know the situation we're in. And as I mentioned, if we can work together as we identify solutions and ways out, we'd appreciate your support.
Part of what we in industry can do and will do is to provide that information to you. Like you say, if you can present information to the governing bodies that, look, we're doing everything we can, for heaven's sakes. We're running a brand newest state-of-the-art, no polluting equipment. The inside of the exhaust stacks on our semis rust. There's no particulate emissions whatsoever. They're not nearly as efficient, nor are they nearly as powerful as the old ones, but they certainly don't create any particulate emissions. So from that side of things, I really appreciate you coming and talking to us, and I appreciate what you are doing, and we certainly understand the problems that we face.
All right, thanks.
I have one more question.
Yes, one more
I just
question.
have one. Do you see that in the foreseeable future that not being attainable, the government steps in? Do you see like a little mini revolt going on in this valley here if we can't?
Well, definitely. I mean, I that's one of the things we pointed out is if you've done everything that's feasible, you're doing everything you can. I mean, we're looking at legal avenues even in that situation. You know, can they enforce a law that you can't comply with? So a revolt is one of the issues. Another thing, and this is the unfortunate thing, unfortunate thing about government, is it's management by crisis, and until there's a crisis, people don't tend to move. We're trying to get people to move before we have the crisis, but if we get to that point, you're going to see the political effort really wick up.
And through KernCog and through ourselves, you'll help us out. What we can do to help facilitate, make your job, present our views or letters we need to do to put our point across to the federal.
Yeah, definitely. And this is going to really transpire over the next 2-3 years, and as we go down that road, we'll be getting information out to you guys. So,
thank you very much.
In regard to that, you say people to move. Well, the fact of the matter is they are moving. They're moving their businesses the hell out of the state of California, and that is a result of all of this. So, all right, thank you very much. Thanks for coming and talking to us. We really appreciate your time.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Scares the hell out of you, I tell you.
Downright scary, indeed. All right, next item on the agenda, council statements, non-action. Councilwoman Hill, I'm going to start you out with this. I'm sorry. No.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for their lovely soiree that they had. There were over 100 people there in full costume. It was a lot of fun, great music, great time had by all, and thank you for all your efforts. That was a lot of work, and it was a lot of fun. I hope next year we can do it again and have even more people. More people help you. I'm sure you would appreciate that. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilman Bryant.
Thank you, sir. Well, it's obvious that regulation in this state, and for the nation for that matter, is driving business out of the state. That's on the business side of things as far as operating and running a business here. But we also know that the state, and we're going to address this later on, hopefully it passes with approval through the council. The state continues to hamper law enforcement efforts, and by way of that, it's driving citizens nuts. And I hope we'll touch on this a little bit later when we get to the Prop 57 matter. But obviously we've got the perception of an issue around here locally. It's been addressed multiple times. I know the chief addressed it at our last Public Safety Committee meeting, and I would hope that we would continue to try to get information out as to how much we're handcuffed as a municipality when it comes to enforcing certain parts of laws. The perception is that we can go out there and just go gangbusters, but that's just not the reality. I really want to give kudos to our police officers for the way that they're doing their job, because we appreciate that. I hope folks understand that, again, the handcuffs that are placed upon them. And just a quick shout out to the Public Works Department. Took it upon themselves today to go out and fix something in the county areas that was bothering some folks who live in Taft, maybe not Taft proper, but within the area we pretty much know as Taft. And I want to thank them for their opportunity to go out and fix that today. That's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Councilman Cryer.
Thank you, Mayor Nor. I'd like to concur with Councilwoman Hill on a Chamber of Commerce well done gala. It was very nice, well attended, and they put a lot of work into it. Everybody that came in here were dressed to the hilt, and it's like we were back in time, there. And it'll be interesting what next year's theme is going to be if they do another gala. It's really a remarkable event. As we noticed, we had a proclamation for Pedestrian Awareness Month, and a lot of times, cars, they follow the rules. You stop at the four-way stop and and the crosswalks and stuff. But so many times, these bicycles that goes right, don't even stop. They go just drive on through, right across the sidewalk, right in front of you, like they're daring you to hit them. And it gets so frustrating. And there's a chances of one of these days that some innocent motorist is going to hit one of those, not just the kids, but they're adults. They know better. They just drive on there two at a time, right on through there. And if it happened to me a couple of times. I'm not the only one. If I was on my guard, I could very well hit them because it's kind of dusk. And it's important. If you're walking, don't depend upon the motorist. They'll see you. If you don't stop, look both directions, and make sure you got eye contact on the motorist, then cross, you'll make it all the way through 100%. But if you don't make that eye contact, you just walk on through there without even looking, more interested in your cell phone or some other distraction, the odds are increased that you can get yourself hurt. So I just like to make a point with the chief here, with the police department, it's a headache and stuff, that we kind of watch out for the crosswalk and stuff, for at least for the month of our Pedestrian Awareness Month, to look out on both sides, for the pedestrians and also the cars that are not obeying the rules and regulations on that. And we are in trying times. You're seeing it's getting more and more common now. You see more bombs going off, more shootings, more stabbings, and why our powers that be trying to figure out if it's terrorists or is it homegrown, is it domestic, or just figuring that stuff out. We all know what the problem is, but be aware, because we're a small town. We can be a soft target. You don't know what's going on. You see something that's suspicious, call 911 or get a hold of the police department. Let them know. Could be, I don't care how minor it is. Let them know. Just that we're cognizant of it, because you just never know what could happen to our schools or our theaters or anything or events that we may have. Because we are a community that never had that type of terrorism that hit us, so we're not reluctant, we're not prepared for it and stuff. But be cognizant of your surroundings and stuff, and because it's getting to get worse. Because there's more and more guests that's being invited by our government come here, and more chances of one of those guests that don't like us going to do something about it. And just be on our guard. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. I would have to agree with you. Situational awareness is critical, whether you're going out to dinner or you're going to the movie or you're going to drive through a crosswalk or you're going to walk across a crosswalk. So you're right, situational awareness is critical. I too wanted to comment on that, on the terrible things happening throughout this country. But you have to look at it. Right now, Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom is hell-bent on disarming a bunch of law-abiding, tax-paying, hard-working citizens in the state of California. Over the course of the last few days, we've seen bombs, pressure cooker bombs go off, pipe bombs go off. We saw an attack in a Minneapolis mall in Minnesota where I believe it was a Somali individual who went in there and started knifing people, mentioning Allah and asking people if they were Muslim before he knifed them. Fortunately, in that attack, he ran across the wrong guy. He ran across an off-duty ex-police chief who owned a firing range, who taught self-defense, who taught the proper use of a firearm, and that individual stopped the melee. So it took one well-informed, skilled individual, one good guy with a gun to stop the bloodshed, and it could have gone on and on and on were it not for that individual. So all those people who were hurt and some people killed over the course of the last few days, it was bombs, it was knives. One good guy with a gun stopped a part of that problem. Now then, you would think by the legislation trying to be passed in the state of California that if you take away all the black guns and the quote-unquote high-cap mags, then no bad things will ever happen again. Well, tell that to the people in Paris who all got run over by a big old truck. And you know what it took to stop that truck? It took some good cops with guns to stop that bad guy. So focus on the reality. Like you say, situational awareness will keep you alive and keep you healthy, and be prepared and be responsible for your own safety. Whether that means looking both ways before you step into a crosswalk, or knowing that in the event of some horrible atrocity taking place in your community, you can take care of yourself and your family. And you can choose to do that in a lot of different ways. It's a personal choice. So that's all I have this evening as well. All right, next up, department reports. Do we have any department reports this evening? I see Mark Staples getting up, kind of.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, Mark Staples, Planning Director. I was wondering if the council wouldn't mind allowing me to defer my time to the Director of the Chamber of Commerce, as she might have missed the public comment period earlier this evening. If you wanted to take her comments. There's a lot of things happening in October, so if you want to...
Well, I tell you what, it is department reports, but as this is Taft, and chivalry is not dead in the city of Taft, we would most certainly welcome Dr. Oren to the podium, especially at your insistence. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you very much. I want to begin by thanking Councilwoman Hill for recognizing the ladies that were here. I'm very proud and very pleased to have served with many of those women, and I appreciate your highlighting that. Thank you. And I also thank you for the nice comments about the gala. The gala was absolutely astonishingly fun, and I appreciate those council members and also city staff that were there. That was wonderful. I want to remind you that the car show is coming up October 1st on the Rails to Trails. We have a lot of folks bringing in their vendor forms as well as entering their cars. And the more cars we have, the bigger the response from the community. So I encourage you, if you have a car that you would like to show off, please enter the car show. Coming up October 6th is the Chamber Mixer for the month of October, and it is going to be in the Lincoln School cafeteria. And I know that many of you have watched the whole project. This is not your mother's school cafeteria, so you will want to come and see. This will be, I think, a venue that many people will want to avail themselves of. It is beautiful, and this is your chance to come and see it, October 6th. Then the following Thursday is the Cougar Cookout at Taft College, and veterans eat free. So if you are a vet, let us know, let the college know, because they want you to be part of the celebration. That's the Cougar Cookout. And the last thing I want to bring forth to you is, sadly, this past weekend in Arvin, 5 students who were returning home to Arvin from out-of-town game were involved in a pretty serious accident, and 2 students were killed. Arvin Taft is playing Arvin this Friday in Arvin, and the Taft Athletic Department wanted to do something to recognize the seriousness of this issue. The quad of Arvin High School was full of students just bereft. This was a serious happening, and it happens all too often in Arvin because it's rural, and kids are on roads to get places other than Arvin. And they wanted to show their respect to Arvin, and this is what they are going to do. You will notice on the helmets of the boys that are playing sports in football this week, on Thursday and Friday, there will be a red paw, the Arvin Bears paw, just as a respect to just to say, we understand this happened, we understand your grief, and we want to acknowledge that. So many people will see this and not understand what's going on. I wanted you to know this is just a showing of respect to the Arvin football teams. Okay, thank you.
Kathy, I was in Arvin today. I was at the Arvin Lions Club, and Arvin's coach and their football players were there, and they talked about that situation. I guess one of them was a JV player that died, and they went through all the things that happened and everything. And towards the end, they had mentioned at Ortro, who are you going to bet on, Taft or Arvin? And they put in a situation, and it cost me some money, of course, and there were a lot of bets flying, and it got real passionate. The coaches gave a passionate speech to how they're going to beat Taft, and their alumni. I almost had to call Ed Whiting come there and escort me out of there, because that got that pretty rough out there. But I made it through, but I picked Taft to win, so they better do good, and so.
Well, they're doing very well so far, so things look good for that.
But they're taking it very well. They had
Yes.
their prayer meeting out there in their quad. We went in their circle, and they're holding hands and going through it. They let the teachers out, and they had their counselors. They're trying to get over the situation that's happening out there. It is a sad deal to listen to the story and everything, and it's a bit emotional.
It's a
evening.
very sad thing, and I applaud the athletic department of Taft High for taking the time to recognize that situation.
I'm sure they will appreciate it, and I'll let them know when I see it again.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Okay, are there any other department reports? None. All right, thank you very much. Next up, city manager statements.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to say I'm glad to see the gala's back, and I applaud the chamber for the well job they did on putting it together. It was very nice.
I saw some pictures of you there, and it looked like you thoroughly enjoyed it and definitely bought into the theme, so congratulations. You make a hell of a gangster.
He's a saucy gangster.
All right, city attorney statements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. No statement.
Future agenda requests. Any future agenda requests at this time?
I do have one. I'd like to do a resolution in support of the federal TCI about the closing, and to the federal government that the closing of that prison have the impact it would do on Taft economically and the citizens that do work there, in support of the federal prison, to keep it as it is without closing.
Well, I don't know that you can pass a resolution in that
We can
regard.
write a letter to the Department of Justice, let them know how it would economically affect our small community, how many folks that we have to work there.
We can certainly do that. So we could put that on your list of things to do.
Any concurrence for that, place on the agenda?
No, it can just be placed on the agenda for the next.
All right, very good. Well then, I would concur.
Thank you.
All right, we'll look forward to hearing about that. All right, next up, consent calendar items 10 through 22. All items listed on the consent calendar shall be considered routine and will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the City Council requests specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Any items removed from the consent calendar will be considered after the regular business items. Are there any items on the consent calendar that any member of the public would like to comment on? Other than former Mayor Linder, who has already commented. Seeing none, we'll move forward. The consent calendar are items number 10, the minutes for the September 6th, 2016 regular meeting. Item number 11, payment of bills, about $1,083,000 worth. Item number 12, zoning ordinance amendment 2016-19, residential densities. Item number 13, zoning ordinance amendment 2016-20, reasonable accommodation. Item number 14, agreement with Westside Healthcare District for healthcare services for the Taft Modified Community Correctional Facility. Item number 15, street closures for the 2016 Chamber of Commerce Car Show. Item number 16, resolution to designate conflict of interest statement flyers and assignment of disclosure categories pursuant to the Political Reform Act of 1974. Item number 17, engineering contract amendment for state and federally funded projects. Item number 18, policy for staff notaries. Item number 19, accepting a donation of 10 each 6-foot park-style benches from the Executive Board of Oil Dorado, Inc. And we did hear from the Executive Board, and the entire city will be very grateful for that. Item number 20, Americans with Disabilities Act Transition Plan. Item number 21, professional services agreement with Graphic Solutions for citywide side program and wayfinding. Item number 22, agreement with GovInvest. Does any member of the council wish to remove any of these items from the consent calendar? Hearing none. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items 10 through 22.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second. May we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem North,
Yes.
Councilmember Crier,
Yes.
Councilmember Bryant,
Yes.
and Councilmember Hill.
Yes.
That passes on a 4-0 vote, with the mayor being absent. Next up, item number 23, resolution in opposition to Proposition 57. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Per the request of the City Council at the September 6, 2016 City Council meeting, a resolution has been prepared in opposition to Proposition 57.
All right, at this time, I would entertain a motion to adopt a resolution entitled Resolution of the City Council of the City of Taft declaring opposition to Proposition 57, the Public Safety and Rehabilitation Act.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Councilwoman Hill, you have the motion. Do you have any comments?
Oh, yes, I do. All right. I'm sure that a lot of people have read this, but I'm sure a lot of people haven't read this. The absolute audacity of our government to think that some of these items are not considered violent crimes offends the living daylights out of me. This is considered a non-violent crime. Rape by intoxication, rape of an unconscious person. Oh, I'm sorry, but because we're laying there, we're not being violently treated. Human trafficking involving sex acts with minors, it's not a violent crime. Probably is to the minor. Drive-by shootings, they're not violent. That's amazing to me. Assault with a deadly weapon, I think that's kind of violent too. Hate crimes causing physical injury, so I guess you have to be really physical to make that violent. And corporal injury to a child, isn't that itself violent?
It's downright disgusting.
I am so
Unthinkable.
offended by this proposition. I just can't even. What does the state have to do to get this out so people understand this is ridiculous? And I guess when I first read this, I just, every time I see this, I get so outraged to consider these things non-violent so we don't have our prisons crowded is the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. And yes, I had to vent that.
I'm so glad you did. Thank you very much.
It's ridiculous. Everybody I see, I've gotten to where this is becoming more and more important to me. Obviously, who's writing this?
This, we can talk about that if you're asking me the question.
Oh, I knew you would answer.
Actually, the chief filled us all in on this. That if you want to come right down to it, what is this all about? This is about keeping scumbags on the street. Why do we want scumbags on the street? Because then they're not in jail. If they're not in jail, then they don't produce an overcrowding problem, and the governor doesn't get arrested and thrown in federal prison. That's the bottom line. There it is. That's what this is all about. So you want to know? Now you know.
I'm outraged, and I just wanted to express that.
All right. All right. I agree with you. Councilman Bryant.
Thank you, sir. You know, excuse me, I can't talk today, and I feel like it's a Monday at times. Fodder for a lot of public discussion locally really stems from property crime. Property crime locally and statewide is really, I guess, enhanced by what we passed in 2014, Prop 47. A lot more scumbags, to use your word, and believe me, I concur with that word wholeheartedly. I would probably like to use a word that isn't appropriate for this venue, so I'll refrain myself. But it's amazing to me that our state continues to add layers upon layers of judicial bureaucracy, for lack of a better term, a way for folks to actually feel protected in the state and by the folks who are enlisted to protect them daily when they're continually hampered and handcuffed even further. And they add more and more layers of these scumbags to our streets on the daily. And this is only going to make things worse should it pass. Given that Prop 47 passed, it would not surprise me whatsoever to see this pass this come November. We'll all sit down on our knees at night and pray that it doesn't. But at the end of the day, I wholeheartedly support our resolution against Prop 57. And again, I applaud our police and local law enforcement for doing the job that they can do within those confines.
Councilman Cryer, do you have any comments on this?
Yes, I do. The comment I have to say is you simply said it all, Mayor Pro Tem Nor. You simply said it all.
Okay, what I'd like to do is I want to read this resolution. I don't often read resolutions in their entirety, but in point of fact, this is a very important one. You heard from the chief earlier about this horrible thing. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, let's do. I'm going to call the chief forward, and I'm going to have Chief tell us a little something about it. So, if you would, please, Chief Whiting.
Mayor Pro Tem, council persons. I have a thought. We're a small town. The governor doesn't like to listen to us. He certainly doesn't like to do anything in our best interests. So why don't we make our voice heard? If you approve this tonight, why don't we send him an original copy to his desk?
I think that's a great idea. Very good idea.
Know what we think about his proposition.
All right. Thank you very much, Chief. I think that is a great idea. And I'm going to go ahead and read this resolution in its entirety so everybody in this community understands just exactly what is going on. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Taft declaring opposition to Proposition 57, and just, if I may, the Public Safety and Rehabilitation Act. That is deplorable. It's almost as despicable as what they call Prop 55. The purposely misleading the populace in order to get them to swallow a bucket of crap and make it taste like a popsicle is the full-time job of those in Sacramento. And it just really gripes me. Whereas the City Council of the City of Taft is the elected governing body authorized to adopt appropriate ordinances, resolutions, and police powers to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the City of Taft. And whereas the City of Taft places a high priority of ensuring the safety and quality of life for its citizens and is committed to developing programs, policies, and opportunities that support public safety. And whereas local government agencies are uniquely positioned to provide for the safety of citizens in their communities. And whereas the City of Taft believes it is appropriate to oppose actions or initiatives at local, state, and federal levels that could jeopardize the safety of our citizens. And whereas Proposition 57, known as the Public Safety and Rehabilitation Act of 2016, has qualified for the November 8, 2016 general election ballot. And whereas the title of the initiative is designed to garner public support, but is misleading and does not reflect its actual provisions to release repeat offenders and other prisoners earlier than allowed by current law, endangers rather than protects public safety. And whereas the stated purpose of the initiative is to improve rehabilitation, and the proposal allows credits for approved rehabilitative or educational achievements, but the proposal provides no funds or any other provisions to develop or expand rehabilitative programs. And whereas the initiative contains the exclusion of enhancements, consecutive sentences, and alternative sentences contrary to longstanding existing law and principles in California law, including Proposition 8, the Victims' Bill of Rights, approved by voters in 1982, Proposition 9, the Victims' Bill of Rights Act of 2008, or Marsy's Law, Proposition 21, the Gang Violence and Juvenile Crime Prevention Act of 1998, among others. Whereas the City Council hereby expresses its concerns over Proposition 57, the Public Safety and Rehabilitation Act of 2016. Now, therefore, it is resolved by the City Council of the City of Taft, Section 1, that the City Council does hereby recognize the priority to ensure the safety of its citizens through adopted programs and policies. That Proposition 57, proposed for the November 8, 2016 general election ballot and known as the Public Safety and Rehabilitation Act of 2016, was qualified through a flawed process that lacked transparency and public input. Section 3, that the measure, if enacted by voters, would prove detrimental to the safety of citizens and is contrary to long-standing existing initiatives and statutes related to public safety. Section 4, that the City Council is strongly opposed to Proposition 57, the Public Safety and Rehabilitation Act of 2016. Section 5, that the City Clerk is hereby directed to distribute copies of this resolution to all interested parties and voters. Section 6, that the City Clerk shall certify to the passage and adoption of this resolution and enter into the book or original resolutions. Passed, approved, and adopted on this 20th day of September 2016. That needed to be read. Everybody need to understand this horrible piece of legislation that, along with the other ones talked about, AB 109, Prop 47, continues to create victims out of tax-paying, law-abiding citizens by leaving dirt bags on the streets. And this is another one of those. So, at this time, I believe that we've already made the motion and made the second. So, this being the end of the discussion, I believe, we're ready for a roll call vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Noor.
Yes.
Councilmember Cryer.
Yes.
Councilmember Bryant.
Yes.
Councilmember Hill.
Yes.
And that passes on a 4-0 vote, absent the mayor this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this evening's meeting. I want to thank you all for being here and being a part of it. And I would look for a motion for adjournment from one of you all.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Good night, everybody. God bless America.
Okay, I'm going to do that in a while.